Now with COVID, you can like do that.
Right. So this talk is going to be recorded.
Sushant, hey, good luck.
Hey, thanks.
So I'll be back in like, a couple of minutes.
Sure, sure.
Good luck, Sushant.
Thanks.
Sushant, hi. This is Najib, your Dean's rep.
Hi, Najib. Nice to meet you.
I just need a favor from you. If you could just make sure and confirm to me before you start that all your committee members are present.
No, not all of them. I think Ethan is still to come, and still I think Max and Furong.
Sure. But before you start, they should all be here. Just
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Good luck.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Good seeing you.
Hi, good to see you too. Hi, so hi.
Hey, Sushant.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's usual.
Sushant, can you check to see if all committee members are in the Zoom? I don't think I see Eitan.
Yeah, Ethan is not here yet. I will message him. I think,
Yeah, like maybe ping him. And I also don't see Furong, but I think the rest of the committee is here.
yeah.
Hey, maybe I can pretend to be Eitan. I don't have good jokes though.
Okay, Eitan is here. I think we are missing only Furong, right?
Yeah.
Can you ping him?
Okay, let me try and do that.
Hey guys, so nice to see you.
Hey,
Hi, Eitan. How you doing?
Doing okay considering the crazy year. Wow, Najib, I'm so happy to see you.
Hello,
Wow.
Eitan. How are you? Hey, Max, Sridhar, Sohail.
Hi.
Yeah, Sridhar is here. I don't see him.
Yes.
Oh, here he is. Here he is. And I see the Honorable Professor James A. Regia is with us.
I got myself up in time.
Jim, whoa, this is not okay. So long. Wow, we have to meet as soon as you're not afraid to meet me.
I'm ready.
And is this a real library behind you or a fake Zoom one?
No, it's real books. Someday I'm going to even read some of them.
You can tell it to people who don't know you as well as I do, my dear. You're doing good? All is good?
Yeah, how about you? NIH treating you well?
NIH is treating me well. You know, you can fool some of the people some of the time. You know how it is. And Sridhar has joined on board in order to make sure I'm under control, you know.
Yeah, that is my job.
Well, not his day job, a sidekick. And Max, you're at home? I think you're on mute.
Yep, I'm at home. Good to see you. Good to see you, Eitan, and Sridhar, Najib, Sohail, everyone.
Yeah. And last but not least, Sushant, right?
Hi.
So, Sohail, I assume you manage the defense and remember what I always tell my students, Sushant, the best defense is to attack.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's a very wise word.
Yes. Very good.
So, I think, yeah, so I did like the previous, like, you know, paperwork before the defense. And Sushant, can you confirm that all of the committee members are in the Zoom?
Yes, Furong has joined. So
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
Furong.
Hello, sorry, I was in a meeting with prospective student. It got a little bit delayed. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone.
No worries. It seems like you're managing the world by the screen behind you or something.
I'm living in a smart cheap, hopefully.
Nice. Eitan, would you do the honor of introducing Sushant before the talk?
Okay. So Sushant, I don't remember how we met. Maybe you took my course or something like that. So Sushant is a wonderful student. We are working together. I dread to think maybe 4 or 5 years already, right? He's from Mumbai, and both his parents are physicians. His father is a surgeon, and his mother is an anesthesiologist in intensive care. Both of them were treating COVID patients, you know, this year. Wow, non-trivial year to all of us, but, you know, especially to such physicians that work in hospitals and so on and so on. And Sushant also participated in some program for gifted kids, which somehow is managed or whatever by an ex-student of Samir Kuler, right, Sushant?
Yeah.
And then he came to Maryland, and then we met, and then he had the good fortune to work with a few people, not just with me, which is always refreshing. So he worked with esteemed colleagues like Sridhar and Roded Sharan, and also a bit with me and with some collaborators. And I think and hope that he was exposed to different ideas and opinions beyond mine. And he only did a small search for a postdoc, not a very wide one, wanted to basically stay in this area. He had a few offers, and he chose one of them, and I think he chose wisely. So he's going to join, just that you guys know, a new AI center in the NCI that is complementary to our branch and is focused on imaging, you know, deep learning, imaging. Sohail, at any point, Sohail Farong, if you guys want, I'll be happy to, Jim, happy to put you in contact with these guys. It's managed by a few wonderful physician colleagues. And Sushant will be one of the founding fathers of that center. I hope he'll still talk to us. And it was really a tremendous pleasure and privilege to have you as one of my poor students, Sushant.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's actually the privilege or honor should be mine rather than for you guys. So without any further ado, I'll get started with today's talk. So good afternoon, and today I'm going to rant about the problem of tumor heterogeneity in cancer. So what is tumor heterogeneity? To put it in simple terms, it is the existence of diverse tumor cell populations, both within and across patients. And it is fueled by evolution and is the source of resistance to most cancer treatments, unfortunately. And in this PhD thesis, I'm going to present a couple of computational methods that characterize this, these different sources of tumor heterogeneity from bulk sequencing data from different perspectives and obtain new insights on tumor progression. So there are three major sources of tumor heterogeneity. The first and the most well-studied is genetic heterogeneity, which refers to the existence of genetically distinct cancer cell clones. And these clones emerge from natural selection of different genetic alterations during tumor evolution and have predefined levels of resistance to different treatments. The second, slightly less studied source of tumor heterogeneity is epigenetic heterogeneity, which refers to the existence of tumor cell populations that can dynamically alter their transcriptional states and hence have the ability to acquire resistance to different treatments, as opposed to having pre-existing resistance. And last but not the least is microenvironmental heterogeneity, which refers to the diversity of ecosystems that these tumor cells reside in and the interaction of these tumor cells with other cell types in these ecosystems. Oh, sorry. Now, as Eitan mentioned, ever since I completed my undergrad in 2016, I've had the extreme good fortune to work with many different labs, each interested in studying different source of tumor heterogeneity Hence, you can see the inherent heterogeneity of projects in this thesis. However, in the interest of time, I will discuss the three most recent projects. Starting with the characterization of intratumor genetic heterogeneity in melanoma and its effect on responses to immune checkpoint blockade therapies. Now, immune checkpoint blockade therapies are a class of immunotherapies that aim to treat cancer by releasing specific breaks of the immune system, which are frequently utilized by cancer cells to halt an immune attack. And the reason these therapies are considered revolutionary is because patients that have responded well to these therapies still walk cancer-free. However, the fraction of patients getting cured from these treatments are still small, and the reasons behind them are yet a mystery. Now, one of the prevailing hypotheses in this field is that tumors with many mutations in their genome should have better responses to these therapies because of the increased rate of production of neoantigens, which are required for immune recognition. However, there are still some gaps that remain to be filled. Now, since having more mutations can also increase the diversity of tumor cell populations, in other words, the intratumor genetic heterogeneity, we were interested in studying how this factor impacts the host immune response and clinical outcomes of immune checkpoint blockade therapies. Now, one of the ways to characterize intratumor genetic heterogeneity is by estimating the number of genetically distinct clones in each patient's tumor sample. Now, in order to do that, one first needs to estimate the fraction of cancer cells in the sample harboring each genetic alterations. Now, since bulk tumor samples are often a mixture of tumor cells that are frequently aneuploid and non-tumor cells from the microenvironment, which are diploid, one can estimate the true fraction of cancer cells, the CCF, harboring any mutations from bulk sequencing data using the following model, in which NA and B represent the observed allele-specific integer copy number of a region of the genome harboring genetic alteration. And the VAF for the variant allele frequency refers to the observed fraction of sequence reads from that tumor sample that map to the mutant allele. And in the simplest scenario where you have a point mutation in a completely diploid population, the true fraction of cancer cells harboring that mutation is simply twice the observed VAF, the variant allele frequency. Now, in order to infer the allele-specific integer copy number of a given genomic region, one can make use of a variety of computational tools such as ASCAT, Absolute, PyClone, and CHAT. And in this analysis, we made use of CHAT. So next, given that you can estimate the cancer cell fractions of each somatic mutation in a tumor sample, one can then estimate the number of clones by finding the best fitting Gaussian mixture model that clusters these mutations based on their cancer cell fraction as seen in this example. And likewise, a similar approach can be taken for copy number alterations. And then the overall number of clones in the tumor samples is estimated to be the maximum number of clusters of mutations and copy number alterations. So having this approach, we estimated the overall tumor mutation burden and the number of clones in each patient's tumor sample from the TCGA melanoma cohort. And we asked how a patient's survival in general depends on the overall tumor mutation burden and likewise the intratumor genetic heterogeneity. And shown on the left here are two Kaplan-Meier plots of overall survival, with the x-axis denoting the time in days and the y-axis denoting the fraction of or the percentage of patients alive. And each curve represents the survival trajectory of a subgroup of patients. And overall, we see a strong negative impact of intratumor genetic heterogeneity on general survival of patients, with the patients having at least 6 genetically distinct clones in their tumors performing the worst. And this is consistent with the role of tumor heterogeneity fueling resistance to conventional therapies. However, in parallel, we also see that the more number of clones in the patient's tumor, the weaker the host immune response, as quantified by the immune cytolytic index, which is the geometric mean of granzyme and perforin expression levels in that tumor sample, and is often used as an approximate readout of the level of cytotoxic T cell activation. Furthermore, among melanoma patients treated with immune checkpoint blockade therapies, we see that the more evenly distributed the mutations among the distinct tumor cell clones, the worse the survival outcomes of patients. So to understand what was going on, to dig a little bit deeper, our experimental collaborators artificially engineered melanoma cell lines with varying degrees of intratumor genetic heterogeneity and injected them in mice with healthy immune systems. And overall, what they found was in the more heterogeneous tumors, as seen in this picture, there is a weaker infiltration of T cells into the tumor mass as compared to like the more homogeneous counterparts here on the right. In addition, they observed weaker activation of T cells by neoantigens, despite these heterogeneous tumors having similar or higher overall neoantigen burden. And this is evident from the lower rate of production of interferon gamma and granzymes by T cells isolated from the heterogeneous tumors as compared to like the more homogeneous counterparts. And finally, when they tried to treat these mice with immune checkpoint blockade therapy, they observed weaker responses in mice as well, with more heterogeneous tumors. And this is evident from observing the growth trajectories of the more heterogeneous tumors in these treated mice in red compared to the growth trajectories of the less heterogeneous tumors in black. So taken together, our results indicated that a higher mutation burden can lead to poorer responses to immune checkpoint blockade therapies if accompanied by an increased intratumor genetic heterogeneity. And this is due to the negative effect of the tumor heterogeneity on the tumor immunogenicity. And the exact mechanism of how the diversification reduces the immunogenicity of neoantigens is still not yet well understood and would require additional experiments and follow-up. So I'm just going to take a little break. So next, I will talk about our work on investigating the factors driving the acquisition of cancer type specific chromosomal aneuploidies. And this work was done in collaboration with Dr. Thomas Reed, who's the chief of CCR genetics at NIH. So as I alluded to earlier, tumor cells are often aneuploid, and almost 90% of all solid tumors harbor some recurrent chromosomal abnormality as a result of chromosomal instability in these cells, and the functional implication of these abnormalities remains unknown. Now, recent pan-cancer studies have, however, shown that these arm imbalance scores, which reflect the relative frequency of gain or loss of specific chromosomal arms in a given cancer type, are not random and cluster by the tissue of tumor origin, as seen in this heat map. And in this project, our aim was to use computational methods to uncover factors explaining this tissue specificity of chromosomal arm imbalances in cancer. So first, we tested if frequent gains or losses of chromosome arms in specific cancer types target cancer type specific driver genes that are present on those chromosome arms in specific tissues. So we started by computing the frequency of chromosome arm losses and the tumor suppressor gene burden on each chromosome arm side by side for each cancer type, and visualize them in this heat map. So the right column for each cancer type depicts the frequency of losses in each arm in that cancer type, and the left column for each depicts the fraction of cancer driver genes on that arm that are tumor suppressors. And overall, we saw consistent positive correlation between the cancer type specific frequencies of losses of chromosome arms and the distribution of tumor suppressors on each arm. And this result was significant because such consistent correlation could not be reproduced by randomly shuffling the frequencies of the chromosome arm losses. However, a similar consistent positive correlation was not observed when looking at the frequencies of the gains in chromosome arms and the oncogene burden on those arms. And furthermore, when we looked at cancer types, how they cluster together based on the chromosome arm imbalance scores, we saw that the cancer types that cluster together based on these scores do not cluster together similarly based on their chromosomal distribution of driver genes, as seen from these two dendrograms. And hence this suggested that driver genes alone cannot explain the observed tissue specificity of these chromosome arm imbalances in cancer. So next, since changes in chromosome arm copy number can create proportional changes in the expression of hundreds of genes, we explored the possibility that the normal gene expression levels of chromosome arms in specific tissues might influence which chromosomal abnormalities are tolerated and thus frequently selected as a result of chromosomal instabilities in cancers emerging from these tissues, as shown in this sort of toy cartoon picture. So to test this, we had the chromosomal arm imbalance scores of the different cancer types from TCGA, and we computed the mean chromosome arm-wide gene expression levels of their corresponding normal tissue of tumor origin from the GTEx database, and placed them side by side and visualize them in this heat map. And overall, so what you have is for each cancer type on the right column, the arm imbalance score of each arm, reflecting the relative frequency of gains and losses of cancer types in this of the arm in this cancer type. And on the left, you have the mean chromosome arm wide gene expression level of each chromosome arm in the normal tissue of origin from which the cancers emerge for each of these cancer types. And overall, we find a striking, consistent, positive correlation between chromosome arm imbalances in different cancer types and the mean chromosome arm-wide gene expression levels in different normal tissues of the tumor origin. This result is again significant because when you try to randomly shuffle the chromosome arm imbalance scores, you cannot reproduce such consistent positive correlations. Furthermore, when you try to cluster cancer types together based on the chromosome arm imbalance scores, as I had shown in the previous dendrogram, and you look at the clustering, you see that tissues that cluster together based on these scores also tend to cluster together based on the mean chromosome arm-wide gene expression levels of their normal tissue of origin. And when looking at an individual sample level, we find that with the help of a k-nearest neighbor classifier, one can predict the tissue of origin of both normal and tumor samples just based on 39 features representing the mean gene expression levels of each chromosome arm in that sample. And such a classification is not possible by a random aggregation of gene expression levels into 39 random features, suggesting that these tissue-specific differences in normal chromosome-wide gene expression levels are preserved and in some cases hardwired during malignant transformation by the acquisition of these tissue-specific chromosomal aneuploidies. So in conclusion, we are demonstrating that the pattern of chromosome arm gains and losses in different cancer types is not random and is selected by a combination of factors wherein in some recurrent chromosomal aneuploidies may target the loss of tissue-specific tumor suppressor genes, whereas others may tend to hardwire the gene expression levels characteristics of their normal tissue of tumor origin. Lastly, I will describe the most recent work in which we developed a computational tool to dissect the cellular heterogeneity of each patient's tumor microenvironment and study the underlying tumor immune interactions. So the tumor microenvironment is a complex ecosystem of different stromal and immune cell types that interact with tumor cells. And now with the recent success of these immune checkpoint blockade therapies, a new race has been launched to identify additional tumor immune interactions that can modulate the host immune response and improve clinical outcomes of patients receiving these therapies. So now a key step to discovering such interactions is our ability to dissect the cellular heterogeneity of each patient's tumor microenvironment, in which we not only have the information of the abundance of different cell types present in the tumor microenvironment, but also the cellular states that these cell types exist in. And this is currently feasible using experimental approaches such as fluorescence activated cell sorting or FACS and single cell RNA sequencing. However, due to the reliance of these approaches on fresh tumor biopsies, especially where cells can be easily physically dissociated, they cannot be applied at scale on large clinical cohorts. Now, since preserved bulk tumor biopsies are more widely available in hospitals and can be sequenced using bulk RNA sequencing, there is a need for computational deconvolution methods that can extract this cell type specific gene expression information from hundreds of bulk tumor samples. So the computational problem that one needs to solve to address this challenge is a matrix factorization problem, in which you are given as input two things: the bulk gene expression matrix M, where each entry Mij represents the mean expression of gene I over all cells in that given sample J. And in addition, you are given the cell fractions of each cell type making up each sample J. And the goal is to factorize this bulk gene expression matrix M into a collection of cell type specific expression matrices such that each entry Ijk represents the mean gene expression of gene I over all cells of cell type K in sample J. Now, what makes this problem challenging is that there exist many optimum solutions, and it's hard to tell which one reflects the ground truth. Hence, one needs to come up with some reasonable heuristics that guide us to an optimum solution closely reflecting the ground truth. So we developed a new computational tool called CodeFax doing exactly that. So CodeFax takes as input the bulk gene expression profiles and the estimates of cell fraction of each cell type in each tumor sample, and then tries to solve this matrix factorization problem with the help of three heuristic modules. And these modules are complementary to one another and are executed in a sequential order. And in addition, CodeFax also uses a confidence ranking system that operates in the background of each module and tries to flag the genes whose expression in specific cell types could not be confidently estimated. So genes that are flagged during the execution of one module are then passed on to the next module for further refinement. And after completion of execution of all the modules, CodeFax outputs the purified cell type specific expression of each gene in each cell type and each sample, along with a matrix of confidence scores ranging from 0 to 1, which reflect the level of confidence that CodeFax eventually has in its estimation of the gene expression levels in each cell type and each sample after the execution of these models. And these scores can be used for any additional quality control analysis of a deconvolved data set downstream. So now the elephant in the room is, okay, there's a bunch of heuristics. How well does this work in practice? So to test how well our tool can purify bulk gene expression profiles, we used single cell RNA-seq data to generate multiple benchmark data sets with bulk gene expression profiles and matched purified cell type specific gene expression profiles, which serve as the ground truth. And in addition, we also procured a data set of lung cancer samples where we had the bulk gene expression and also the match purified FACS sorted gene expression of different cell types in each sample. So then after applying our tool on these benchmark data sets, we found that overall CodeFax, as shown in yellow, markedly improves over the state-of-the-art method for this task, CyberSort X, shown in blue. And panels A to C over here are looking at the coverage of genes in each cell type, these different data sets, whose expression can be reconstructed with an accuracy exceeding a specific threshold and comparing to the ground truth. And for the sake of visualization, this threshold of accuracy was set to a Kendall's correlation of greater than 0.3 with the ground truth. But more generally, when we look at the accuracy distribution, we see an improvement overall in each cell type when using CodeFax, as shown by the yellow box plots, as compared to the state-of-the-art method CyberSort X, which is still limited in its coverage and hence ignores the reconstruction of expression of many genes in different cell types. Now, it is important to note that it may not be possible to reconstruct the expression of all genes in a given cell type. And the reconstruction becomes particularly hard as one goes from abundant cell types to rarer cell types in the tumor microenvironment. So in addition to these 3 data sets, we also benchmarked CodeFax on 12 additional data sets with technical replicates simulating batch effects. And overall, we saw robust improvement over the state of the art. So these, I have the slides for these, but I haven't shown for all the 12 because it will just overpopulate the slide. So after testing the performance of our tool, we next developed a supporting statistical framework called Lyrics, which takes this deconvolved gene expression data from CodeFax and projects it on a database consisting of all prior immunological knowledge on ligand receptor interactions between different cell types. And this database we manually curated from literature sources such as the Janeway's Immunobiology, which is sort of a gold standard textbook in immunology, and additional literature resources. And after having curated these interactions, we then look at each patient sample and simply flag which cell-cell interactions are likely to occur in that sample based on the mutual overexpression of the respective ligand receptor genes on the respective cell types in that sample, because that's like the basic necessity for that ligand receptor interaction to occur. And a ligand or a receptor gene is said to be overexpressed on a cell type in a given sample if its gene expression in that cell type in that given sample exceeds the median gene expression in that cell type over the population. So finally, with this data, one can now correlate it against specific clinical outcomes or phenotypes of interest using a Fisher's test to identify which cell-cell interactions are likely to occur with a significantly higher frequency in a given phenotype of interest compared to, say, some control group. So with this framework set up, we went ahead and applied our tools across all solid tumor samples from the TCGA collection to characterize which cell-cell interactions frequently occur in the tumor microenvironment of mismatch repair deficient tumors. Now, why were we specifically interested in studying these tumors is because these are a specific class of highly mutated tumors that respond extremely well to immune checkpoint blockade therapies as compared to other hypermutated tumors. And this led to the historical approval by the FDA of mismatch repair deficiency as the first cancer type agnostic biomarker of response to immune checkpoint blockade. However, the reason behind their universally exceptional responses is not yet well understood. So we wanted to study that. So we did a differential analysis using lyrics, which revealed a shared repertoire of cell-cell interactions that occur frequently in mismatch repair deficient solid tumors when compared to non-mismatch repair deficient tumors, irrespective of tumor type. And this is depicted from these scatter plots where each axis looks at the fold change in the frequency of occurrence of each cell-cell interaction in mismatch repair deficient tumors of a tumor type versus the control non-mismatch repair deficient tumors of the tumor. And in general, these interactions which I've highlighted in red, in the scatter plot are shared by multiple tumor types and are among the top most frequently active interactions among all mismatch repair deficient solid tumors. So on a closer inspection, we find that these interaction consists of the famous PD-L1, PD-1 immune checkpoint interactions for which this treatment has been developed between tumor cells and T cells. But we also notice the frequent co-occurrence of the 4-1BB ligand receptor interaction between tumor cells and T cells, and like the ULBP2, NKG2D co-stimulatory interactions. These co-stimulatory interactions between tumor cells and T cells. So in other words, these interactions, these specific co-stimulatory interactions provide a secondary activation signal to T cells in addition to tumor neoantigens. And more importantly, we notice that these interactions frequently occur only in mismatch repair deficient tumors as compared to other hypermutated tumors. So taken together, these results suggested that T cells can be activated by additional co-stimulatory signals in the tumor microenvironment, independently of the neoantigen burden, and that the presence of these signals might facilitate superior responses to immune checkpoint blockade therapy. Next, given the lack of sufficiently many large bulk transcriptomic data sets of patients treated with immune checkpoint blockers, we asked if we can use this large resource of deconvolved TCGA data we generated to train a predictor of response to immune checkpoint blockade therapy. And we specifically focus on melanoma as it is the poster child of immune checkpoint blockade therapies, with multiple independent test data sets of patients receiving these treatments that are publicly available. So starting from the deconvolved TCGA melanoma data set of roughly 470 patients as our training set, we employ a genetic algorithm, which is a popular randomized heuristic search technique used in AI and operations research to find a small combination of cell-cell interactions whose activity best separates hypermutated melanoma tumors from non-hypermutated melanoma tumors. And the assumption baked in was that the differences between these two groups, coupled with the relatively large sample size of patients from the TCGA, should provide sufficient clues to find a key combination of cell-cell interactions in the tumor microenvironment that are predictive of response to immune checkpoint blockade. So this exercise resulted in the identification of 100 key cell-cell interactions. And then without any additional training, we then simply count how many of these interactions occur in each test patient's tumor sample in independently deconvolved immunotherapy test data sets, and use these counts as a basis to predict which patients are likely to receive clinical benefit. And remarkably, we find that our cell-cell interaction count-based score can robustly stratify which patients are likely to receive durable clinical benefit from immune checkpoint blockade and which aren't. And this was true even after accounting for the differences in the mutation burden of these tumors and the clinical settings of the patient, like which specific immune checkpoint blockade treatment, whether it was monotherapy or combination, was received. And the results presented here are based on patient data made recently available from the 3 largest independent melanoma immunotherapy data sets, patients receiving checkpoint blockade therapy. And for comparison, we also present the performance of recent state-of-the-art bulk transcriptomics-based predictors on these recently available test data sets, namely IMPRESS, MPS, and TIDE. So to understand why a predictor generalized on these independent test data sets, we went back and examined the features selected by the genetic algorithm. And overall, we found that the learned features were enriched for co-stimulatory interactions known from prior immunological literature. Again, highlighting the importance of co-stimulation in the tumor microenvironment. In addition, we saw many cytokine, chemokine receptor interactions involved in a pro-inflammatory response and in recruitment of these lymphocytes, which leads to this better lymphocyte infiltration into the tumor mass. So in conclusion, we presented a new tool that enables one to perform a virtual average single cell characterization of each patient's tumor microenvironment and generated a large resource of purified cell type specific expression profiles of patients from the TCGA, which the research community can use to generate new hypotheses or test some hypotheses in patient data. Our analysis of this deconvolved data of patients reveals that immune cell activation is tightly regulated by a combination of signals in the tumor microenvironment. And while recognition of tumor-specific antigens is important, is necessary, might serve as the ideal ignition switch, one may require like additional co-stimulatory signals that serve as gas pedals to sustain successful anti-tumor immune responses in patients, in addition to releasing the brakes using these checkpoint blockade therapies. And however, in the future, what is going to be important is finding the right balance in order to maximize clinical benefit of patients while minimizing immune-related adverse events. So that's it. That's the presentation, and I would like to thank the thesis committee members, especially my PhD advisor, Dr. Ethan Rupin, who's been a constant source of support and guidance. During my PhD. And Dr. Sohail Faizi for kindly volunteering to chair this defense. I would also like to thank Dr. Najib Al-Said for being the Dean's representative in this defense and the other thesis committee members for their patience and their time to listening to this talk. I would also like to thank all the past and present members of the Cancer Data Science Lab, where I'm currently at, for the collaborations and the interactions. I learned a lot from these interactions. And my collaborators from the Weizmann Institute of Science, who did the analysis, the intratumor heterogeneity analysis in mice, and Dr. Thomas Reed, again from CCR Genetics. I would also like to have a special shout out for Dr. Noah Moslander, who's been an indispensable source of guidance during the second half of my PhD, and other professors who I got to collaborate with during this course. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the NCI UMD Partnership Program for funding this research, and of course my parents and my family and friends for all their support, especially during last year when the COVID pandemic hit the world. So that's it, and I would be happy to take any questions. You're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Sushant. Great talk. And yeah, let's open the floor to questions from the audience. And I think the committee members will have also opportunities to ask questions now and also in the private session.
So it's okay, guys, if you are listening in the audience to ask Sushant questions. It will not be counted against him. On the contrary, it will counted for him. So please ask questions if you have any.
Sushant, you haven't planted any questions in the audience?
Well, if I were a magician, I would have asked for volunteers, but
Right.
Great. Maybe I can.
Sridhar, you're on mute. I think you're saying something, but you're on mute. Like
Right,
I
right.
was.
No, I just wanted to get a sense, Sushant, from you about this deconvolution field. What are still some missing pieces now that you have this wonderful method that outperforms everything out there? What is still missing?
so the biggest thing that is very critical, which it's a good question, because the biggest thing that is critical for all these deconvolution methods, which I haven't mentioned, is this component which goes into the input, which is the cell fractions. So usually to estimate what is the fraction of each cell type in the sample, you have to rely on some markers or signatures of the different cell types. And that can be used as a proxy to identify what's the abundance of the different cell types in each tumor samples. And if those markers are not good, this is all garbage. So garbage goes in and garbage comes out. So that is, and this area of identifying the right and robust markers, signatures for different cell types is still an active area of research. And this is especially true for rare cell types.
Yeah, and more work is coming out talking about, everything is bloody context specific,
Yeah.
So even these well-defined cell type signature is context specific. So that
yes,
complicates the matter quite a lot. Anyway,
yes.
yeah. Okay.
Sridhar?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a big project in the lab. It's good we are talking, that we are looking at the signatures of all the immune cell types across many different tissues, both in normal and in cancer tissues, in order to characterize the landscape of the signatures and try to quantify rigorously how they change actually. And this is based, of course, of analysis of single cell data and so on and so on. And a lot of, there have been hundreds or thousands of papers by now, some of them published in very high impact places, where did a cybersort analysis of different tumors and tissues. And all of that was based on signatures which were derived from the blood. So you can just imagine the problems and challenges. So we are trying to provide a resource, of tissue-specific signatures of immune cells across many tissues, both in normal and tumors and so on.
That's great. That's great.
And in addition, in our analysis, we, especially for TCGA, because TCGA had methylation data. So we specifically relied on the methylation signatures of the different cell types, because it is known that methylation is more stable. The marks, the methylation specific, like the marks of identity from methylation are more stable than expression. So we used, at least in TCGA, there was this compendium of methylation signatures of different cell types in the tumor microenvironment that was publicly available. And we had the bulk methylation of each of these tumor samples that enabled us to recover the abundances of the different cell types in each tumor sample from the TCGA.
Okay.
So Sridhar, another challenge that is an open challenge is to do the same thing, but for methylation. That is, take bulk methylation and deconvolve it to the methylation signatures on different cell types. There is some work that has been done actually by Eran Halperin's lab in this direction. I think it's a Nature Methods paper or something.
But I thought this paper you guys used, did you use methylation data to deconvolve or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we used is the signatures. So you need to know the abundance of the cell types. There are many ways to do that. So
that is based on the methylation, but the actual deconvolution is still transcriptome, obviously.
Yes, that's a different issue. And another issue we just started working now, just in the recent days is on taking our approaches and develop them to deconvolve proteomics data.
Mhm.
So for that, of course, we need some, as Susan said, some proteomic signatures of different cells and so on. So we are talking with Tammy Geiger, a big proteomics lady back in Israel on doing that. And then we will hopefully at some point be able to deconvolve proteomics data and all the CPTAC data and see what you can learn from that and so on.
Okay.
There is another question I see in the chat box from Eric Lee. Sushant, can you elaborate on how the hypergeometric test was done on slide 38? Sushant, can you please go to slide 38?
Yes. So
You know what it's about. Yeah, sure.
Yes. So from our database, we have this curated database of all plausible immune-related ligand receptor interactions. Now, one of the things which was missing was the annotation. So we actually went down to the literature, down to each ligand receptor interaction, and collected any known information of these interactions, different immunological condition, or if there is any knowledge of these interactions from prior literature. Whether they are, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so if they are co-stimulatory or if they are inhibitory or checkpoint or other checkpoint interactions, or they have some other function, and we got and systematically collected these annotations. So this feature space, this database which represents this whole feature space is roughly 4,000, and we have these annotations of these different interactions. And what we then did, the hypergeometric testing was in this whole database, and now you compare what the genetic algorithm selects, how frequently or how strongly enriched are these co-stimulatory interactions that were selected in this cell-cell interaction network selected by the genetic. That's what the hypergeometric test is testing.
Eric, does that answer your question? Yeah, sure. And anyone else would like from the audience to ask questions?
Hi, this is Karthik Kaushik here. Sushant, I have a quick question for you. So I am not a biologist or a biostatistician or in medicine by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I can call myself an amateur statistician. And I heard that you mentioned something about testing it against Kendall coefficient of 0.3 on one of the slides. Can you go back and elaborate on that a little bit, please? Thank you.
That's a very good question, because as I mentioned before, we are looking using single cell data as a basis to generate a pseudo bulk gene expression and the purified cell type specific expression. Now it's important to note that single cell data, you will see many ties in gene expression levels, because a lot of the genes, their expression is 0. There's this problem of dropouts. So in this situation where you have dropouts and you can have a lot of ties, you need to have a much more, less inflated measure of correlation that can handle the breakage of ties in this data. So that's why we use the Kendall's tau measure rather than Spearman correlation, because Spearman correlation, when there are many ties in the data, it seems to result in inflated correlation values. So we didn't want that.
Yes, but why the 0.3?
Oh, the 0.3 was for the sake of visualization on this plot. We looked at the overall Kendall correlation distribution for the genes. This is in panels D and F. I apologize in case that didn't get across.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Sushant.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience, perhaps? If not, I think I see one special person in the audience, and that is Dr. Geeta Patkar, which I believe is Sushant's mother. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is my research hypothesis correct? So I just
Yeah.
want to say hi. I don't. Hey, if you have a camera and want to show yourself, that's one of the advantages of having. Hey, oh, I see. The whole family is there. Hi, my name is Eitan, and I had the privilege of working with your son.
We have met, if you remember.
I'm sorry?
We have met.
Yes, but that was pre-COVID. I mean, it's in a different universe, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
You lost a lot of weight.
Thank you. Thank you. That's again one of the, yeah, so I believe we met and had lunch in the famous building 10, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, it's a different universe. So you guys are at home?
Yes, we are at
Okay.
home.
Oh, fantastic. And who are the young fellows that are joining you?
I'm Sushant's sister, Gayatri.
Very nice to
She's
meet
my
you.
elder sister.
This is my son-in-law, Arjun.
Hey, very nice to meet you. So we are really privileged to get to know your son, and he has done amazing work. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He has done
Thanks a
amazing
lot.
work, and he will continue to do amazing work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks a lot for guiding him all throughout.
no, I mainly tried not to disturb, my usual thing, you know, not to disturb the progress of science. That's my main mission. And he fortunately will continue to stay in the NCI. So you have another reason to come and visit us. And I'm looking forward to buy you lunch at our famous cafeteria.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, looking forward to.
And stay safe, everyone. I heard you are vaccinated already. So,
Yes, we are.
yeah, so looking forward and stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Sure. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I think we'll move to the closed meeting if it's okay. Sohail?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so audience non-committee members may leave the Zoom meeting at this point, and then we'll continue in the private session.